It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Alrighty. Ohio Political News Podcast here as live and in person. We got a great show tonight. Michael Hitchborn is joining us. We'll get you with Michael here in just a second. Brian, you're out there here tonight. How goes it from that?
Welcome to everyone.
Secret hideaway in your basement. There you go. It's an excellent
Yes.
place. Listen, Bernie Sanders is asking for money, Brian. Bernie Sanders wants to get into your
running
pocketbook.
around this country along with others to rally the American people.
Wants to rally.
Continue the fight.
Got to rally the American people. Okay. He said he's going to be out running.
Communist. I'm telling you.
He's going to be out running around everywhere. Okay. Yeah. Right.
For justice, the standard you could afford, we'd much appreciate it. Thank you very much.
$27 he needs it. Okay. I could go for $27 right now myself.
It doesn't buy much these days. 27.
Yeah. I thought he'd be asking for more than that, but I guess it's not. Anyhow, everybody needs money these days. How you doing, Michael?
I'm doing great, thanks.
Thanks for coming on tonight. Really appreciate it. Lepanto Institute. I was looking it up on the internet and stuff like that. So you got a lot of great information, and we want to talk tonight. I think mostly about the role that the Catholic Church is playing in this whole USAID. Well, before we do that, tell me a little bit about Lepanto. Okay, could you just do that?
Sure. I started the Lepanto Institute at the end of 2014. It was a project that I had started when I was at American Life League. And I had been investigating organizations, charitable organizations within the Catholic Church. And I started seeing some connections with pro-abortion organizations like the Catholic Campaign for Human Development, which is run by the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, is regularly providing grants to organizations that are fighting in support of abortion, contraception, homosexuality, Marxism, you name it. Then I started looking into Catholic Relief Services. And I saw that Catholic Relief Services was also providing funding to the enemies of life. They were also helping to institute programs through USAID, and we'll get into talking about that a little bit later.
Sure.
And then as I was looking at Catholic Relief Services, I started looking at Catholic Charities, and then I was looking at Caritas Internationalis, which is run out of the Vatican. And just to be clear, I'm Catholic. And I'm a lifelong Catholic. I'm a traditional Catholic. We go to the traditional Latin Mass. And I am aghast at what I have been finding consistently with organizations claiming to be Catholic that are operating by trying to wed the church to the world and finance the enemies of life.
Gotcha. All right, so let's dive into this USAID. This is that big slush fund. I was reading it's $44 billion. Okay, now Trump has kind of like shut it down and everything. But I want to go there because Catholic Relief Services was getting a lot of money from USAID, as using it for humanitarian efforts and stuff like that. So let's start there. What is so terrible about this with the Catholic, this Catholic Relief Services getting this money from USAID the way they did?
Well, you have to start with the fact that USAID was instituted as a population control program. When Catholic Relief Services, when any agency applies for a grant from USAID, it's not like they're going to USAID saying, hey, we want to help fund, we want to bring food to these people in Ghana, or there are some people in Malawi that need mosquito nets, or there are people in Zimbabwe that need antiretroviral medication. they don't go to USAID and say, we can supply that, we just need funding to do it. USAID puts out a grant request or a grant form and says, we have a particular project that we want implemented by an NGO. So NGOs can now apply for this grant, and they then go and they implement the grant once they win that particular project. The problem is that what USAID is instituting is a globalist system that relies on international supply chains and the work of NGOs to make and perpetuate reliance upon those programs. Let me explain. For instance, if USAID says, okay, we're going to run a program in Kenya, and in that program we need 5 NGOs who are going to supply this kind of medication, these sexual and reproductive health services. We want to make sure that we've got certain other aspects of this project all set up. So NGOs are going to be responsible for going in, putting up storefronts with all of the logos and all of the marketing materials to say, hey, here's your one-stop shop for all the things that you need along the lines of whatever it is they're supplying. So those agencies make the project, or they make the people reliant upon the project to perpetuate those services. So if the funding gets cut off, or if the project goes away, suddenly those people are left out on the lurch. They've become reliant on it. They need it. So
the people that you're referring to, are those the people that are getting the aid, or are you also referring to like the workers?
Well, all of it.
Yeah.
So the people who are receiving the aid in Kenya or Ghana or wherever it is, they become reliant on the services. The workers and the NGOs become reliant upon USAID funding to perpetuate the project. So it becomes this self-perpetuated thing. Now, the projects usually go about 5 to 10 years, and then they either extend it or they change the name, but basically it winds up morphing into something else, and they wind up operating in the same area under a different name, but it's still the same thing. They're still doing the same stuff. So USAID is perpetuating itself by getting people addicted to their funding, getting the NGOs addicted to whatever supply chain they're creating. So it's an international socialist system that they're setting up. But the problem ultimately is that USAID was set up primarily as a population control program. If you read the Foreign Assistance Act of 1961, population or control of population growth was established as one of the criteria for determining a country's commitment to what they called the most effective use of assistance to help satisfy basic human needs for the poor. Let
me ask you a question right there. 1 second. Let me just hop in here for a question. So what you're saying, population control. Now, we want to stick with the Catholics here, the Catholic Church, Catholic Relief Services. So were they involved at all in that population control? Are they somehow connected with it? I'm trying to find out where, the devious nature of all this is with Catholic Relief Services. So were they part of that at all?
So I have seen inventory reports showing that CRS received and distributed 2.25 million units of contraception through USAID funding, through a project that USAID had implemented. Catholic Relief Services claimed that, well, the inventory reports may look like we did this, but we didn't. It was actually set up under somebody else. They just happened to use our project area to distribute the contraception, but we weren't the ones who got our hands dirty with it. However, last year we published a 130-page report, which was the end of a 1.5-year-long investigation. We sent researchers on the ground in 3 countries in Africa, Cameroon, Zimbabwe, and Lesotho.
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather, now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
And they were researching Catholic Relief Services project specifically. And what we found is that CRS in Zimbabwe and Lesotho was the lead implementing organizer for a project called DREAMS. And the number one priority for DREAMS was increasing the contraceptive method mix. CRS says, well, we weren't really setting up the contraception stuff, but they were responsible for setting up the NGO who did all the contraceptive stuff as a part of the project. What's more is that CRS, in drawing people into the project, signing them up, would then say, okay, here are all the services that are available to you, including all of the contraception and condoms, and you can go get those at this other organization's site, but it's all part of the same project. So you see, CRS is directly complicit in setting up the project and setting up the contraceptive components, even though they say, well, we didn't actually get our hands dirty with the contraceptives themselves.
So if they are, let me understand this, I'll get Brian in here in a second. So if they're setting up another NGO for contraception, which they themselves are totally against, right? So the Catholic Relief Service is totally against contraception. But if they're setting up another NGO that is going to have the contraceptions, condoms or whatever, I don't know even what they're having there, they're directly providing this then.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So how is it that they say they're not providing it, I guess? It seems like they definitely have their hand in the cookie jar there. And that
It's called a deception, Joe.
It's a deception. But wait, here's one other question. Why did they even do that? Why don't they just have another humanitarian effort? This is $44 billion in USAID money for humanitarian efforts, supposedly. Now, we know that it's the biggest fraud going on, okay? That's why Trump shut it down. But if they don't need the money for for contraceptions, why are they even setting up the NGO?
So the reason is that it's all part of a condition of receiving the grant money. So in order for CRS to win the big grant, they have to be willing to implement all the aspects of the program, including the contraceptive stuff. And they justify it by saying, well, since we're not getting our hands dirty with that, it's not actually us who's setting that up. We're just doing the good stuff, the good parts of this project. Somebody else is doing the bad part. That's like saying...
But they're providing the bad part. They're providing the bad part, yeah.
Yes. Effectively what they're doing is they're saying, okay, I'm the principal of a school, and I know that these guys over here, they're selling drugs in the schoolyard. In fact, we're going to let them sell drugs in the schoolyard, but we're not the ones supplying drugs, so it's not our problem.
Yeah, that's crazy. That is crazy. So, yeah, go ahead, Brian. You probably have a question or two, I think.
Well,
crazy, man.
I look forward to exposing this deception. Michael, we really appreciate you doing this. And what we do here in Lake County is we're promoting honesty, integrity, and transparency in government by exposing the lies, deceptions, and the betrayals. And unfortunately, the Catholic Church, and I happen to be a Catholic also, but they have, let me just say that, as far as, preaching the revealed Word of God, leaves a lot to be desired.
Well, it's interesting you would bring that up because as a recipient of USAID funding, Catholic Relief Services is forbidden from using the time in their project to propagate the faith. They're not allowed to talk about the faith. They're not allowed to hand out Bibles. They're not allowed to hand out prayer cards. They're not allowed to invite people to Mass, to invite people to pray the rosary. They're not, in other words, in one of the government documents that I saw explaining how this works, there's no God talk on Uncle Sam's dime. That's a direct quote. So Catholic Relief Services, because of the reception of those federal funds, is not allowed to proselytize. It's not allowed to actually perform the primary purpose of the existence of the church, which is to draw souls to Christ. So they're completely abandoning their primary mission and they've simply turned to humanitarian aid. It begs the question, well, why even call yourself Catholic?
Yeah. Okay. Now I was I got something here. I was just pulled this off, and okay, they were audited. They said 521 million came from the government grants and stuff like that for them last year. They said another 493 million was donated assets like beds, nets, pharmaceuticals, non-food items, things like that. So they're claiming that 62% came from the government, which would be 744 million.
Yeah.
So if 62% came from the government, why can't they still proclaim the gospel? I mean, they're not. Are they using a? Maybe because they're using 62% of their total.
Nope.
This is their total budget. This is their total budget of 1.2 billion. 62% they said came from federal government. Does that sound right?
Sure. Yeah, that sounds about right. It's pretty consistent that way. But what you have to understand, and a lot of people, it's hard to wrap your head around it until you really see exactly how these projects work. When CRS sets up shop in a country, they're not just going there as Catholic Relief Services saying, okay, guys, we've got food. If you want food, come get it. They're implementing a project that they have been commissioned to implement. And when it is a government contract, they're not allowed to proselytize through that contract at all, period. And what's more is that they actually don't even hire exclusively Catholics. They hire Hindus, they hire Muslims. So even the Catholic mark of the workers is not exclusively Catholic, which again, it just continues to beg that question, why call yourself Catholic then? It also begs the question, well, where does the rest of that $400 million go? You know, if $700 million is coming from federal projects to implement these projects, well, what are they doing with the other $400 million? Are they just simply paying their workers that way?
All right, I got this off of your website, and just some of the salaries here. And the guy that you're not mentioning is the current CEO, who is Sean Callahan. He makes over $500,000. But you got these other guys, William J. McCarthy at $510,000, Emmy Glynn Ryan, she is a chief of staff, $346,000, Thomas Blonsky, $313,000, and so these are some pretty big salaries that are going on. I like that heading there. It says "Getting Rich by Helping the Poor." It's a good concept because. And here's another picture. The guy in the hat. I found this too. Just surfing a little bit. That is Callahan. That's the current CEO or whatever. Now, that's a staged photo, obviously. I saw another picture where he was out, and it was another staged photo. But, he's got that clean white shirt on and everything. He hasn't been out in the African safari there for very long. He's looking at something that she's... the heading under the picture was she was pollinating beans or something like that. Anyhow, there you go. But I guess my biggest problem I have with this whole thing would be when we get back to the whole idea that it's a little bit of a shell game, so that they can get all this money from USAID, then they have to play the game of contraceptions and things like that. Right. That's a big problem right there. So that would probably be the biggest problem, I would think.
So when we're talking about CRS, Catholic Relief Services, that is Catholic Charities. Is that correct?
No, they're two different organizations. Catholic Charities is a separate EIN. It's a separate tax ID number entirely, completely separate organization from Catholic Relief Services. Catholic Charities works primarily within the United States. Catholic Relief Services is the international aid and development agency, so it works outside the United States.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Well, would you say that the Catholic Charities has fallen into the same trap as the CRS, accepting money?
Yep.
And doing things such as child trafficking or anything like that.
Well, yeah, and this is ultimately the big problem with Catholic Charities, Catholic Relief Services, any of these entities that are receiving federal funds. They wind up abandoning the primary purpose of the church, which is to draw souls to Christ, by receiving federal funds. And with Catholic Charities specifically, some of these individual Catholic Charities groups, like Catholic Charities in Fort Worth, I think, which, if memory serves, 92% of their overall budget came from the federal government. But when you look at what Catholic Charities is doing by working primarily off of the government dole, it is not really a Catholic group. It's simply an extension of the government.
Well, here's a question for you then. If they're giving $44 billion to humanitarian efforts, why is it so important that the Catholic Church is even involved? If they're not involved, there'd be another NGO or something doing what they're doing, right? Why? Maybe they should just stick with their own personal donations, do their own charitable work apart from the federal government. The federal government, supposedly that $44 billion is for humanitarian aid from all different types of NGOs. So whatever the church is doing, they could find another NGO to do that, right? And then they could just go about evangelizing and with their own funds. But it's probably a lot easier if you get that big cash cow just handed to you, right?
Well, ultimately, I think what we want is for the federal government to get out of charity, get out of the business of charity altogether. And what we would like to see is for charity, which has been turned into an industry, to go back to being something that was propagated by the mendicant orders. We would like to see the Franciscans, the Dominicans, all of the different religious orders that used to perform all the primary works of charity, the corporal works of mercy. We would love to see them back in the role of performing these charitable works, because when it's done properly with that, where prayer is primary, prayer is the predicate of everything that's done, and then secondary to that are the works of mercy without any recourse. So they're not drawing these huge salaries. They don't need a 501 or a 401k. They don't need a retirement fund. They don't need health benefits. But they're simply going into the streets like Mother Teresa of Calcutta, and they are engaging in the corporal works of mercy without any recourse to themselves, without any expectation of any recompense. We have seen charity turned into an industry, and that's the primary problem. Because now people, as a priest friend of mine said, people usually start off doing good and then they wind up doing well. And that's exactly what's happened with these CEOs at Catholic Charities and Catholic Relief Services and so forth.
Yeah.
Michael, it sounds like the Catholic Church has conformed to the world.
Well, it sounds like the Catholic Church has been wedded to the world. And this is a whole other conversation, but I think that a lot of this was predicated on what happened in the Second Vatican Council, where they changed the focus of the church from drawing souls to Christ to performing works of social justice.
Yeah,
that's a good point. All right, let's just switch. One last question. I want to probably go into more into that whole realm of maybe evangelization or something, but the whole immigration process. I mean, how much do you know anything about that? Like, how much was the church involved with the illegal immigrants and stuff like that, moving them around to different localities and things? Did you do any research on that, your group?
So we've kept an eye on it, but I don't have any direct evidence. We don't have anybody on the ground down at the border that are conducting any kind of investigations. But I am aware from people who have been involved in those kinds of investigations that Catholic Relief Services, and this is secondhand information, okay? I'm not speaking from firsthand accounts. But from what I am told, there are bishops down in South America who work with Catholic Charities organizations in South America, in Colombia, in Nicaragua, and a few other places, and they will round people up.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
And they'll push them all the way up to the border. They'll get them processed at that point, and then through the assistance of the Catholic Charities groups there, working in collaboration with Coyotes, will go to the illegal ports of entry or illegal points of entry along the border, and get them across. And then the Catholic Charities on the other side will say, well, they've been processed, because in a technical way they have been, and then they'll start working the paperwork on the other side of it, and they're getting a big government check to do it.
Yeah, because it's illegal. It's illegal immigration. We
Joe, can I tell Michael my personal story?
Completely forget about that. It's called illegal immigration, right? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Michael, let me just take 1 minute. I'll tell you my personal story, firsthand experience. A few years ago, I wrote an article for the local newspaper, and it had to deal. It was dealing with the national sovereignty, and I said you cannot have an open border. In Mexico, the southern border it's got to be closed, or else you're going to lose your national sovereignty. Well, what happened was the local priest used that article, and he had a mass, and his homily had to deal with this article, and basically said the person that wrote this is not a good Christian, because we must have, people from all over the world must be coming into the United States, and that was their position. So when I called him, I said, I just don't agree with you. You cannot have the world come in through the southern border. And he said to me, well, you sound more like a Protestant than a Catholic. So that is the Catholic Church here locally. They believe in open borders and bringing the world into the United States, and it will destroy the United States.
I wish I could say that I was shocked, but the truth is that seems to be the attitude that I've observed with many priests and some bishops.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for confirming that for me.
Jonathan, how
hey
you
guys,
doing?
Jonathan.
Hey, I think you got some feedback or something with your mic or something.
Yeah, it's about 10 degrees in my office. It's a space heater. Give me a second. Let me turn this thing off.
Yeah, no sweat.
It's like it's February or something.
Yeah, it's like it's cold outside or something. Although I don't feel so bad, because I talked to somebody in Wisconsin the other day, and they said it was 14 degrees. Yeah, and they said the overnight low was like 8 below or something, so I didn't feel quite as bad. But all right, we got a special guest. Michael Hitchborn is with us here tonight, and so we've been talking about the immigration. We've been talking about the Catholic Relief Services and their situation with the USAID and all of that. So we can go back into that in a minute, Michael, but let's talk something else. I was on your website, and there was a couple other things I thought were very interesting. One was there's an article that you wrote about the rainbow shadow, right? Or somebody wrote it, so it's on your website. But do you want to talk about that? Let's just talk about that for a minute. So it has to do with the Catholic faith, but not so much with the immigration process. But this whole thing about just really cuddling up to the whole LGBTQ society, and everybody has to love each other, and it's just God's mercy. But there's, what's your thoughts on that? You had some really good thoughts on that, I thought.
Right. So this was actually written by one of our associate writers, William Mahoney, who did the research for me. I actually had a tip. Somebody sent me a tip from various sources pointing out the LGBTQ agenda. Now, one of the things that we've done with the Lepanto Institute over the last several years is keep a heavy eye on an organization called the Association of U.S. Catholic Priests. They boast about 1,500 members across the United States, 1,500 priest members, by the way. And they are an infiltrating, undermining organization attempting to change the church's teachings on things like on human sexuality, on contraception, on a host of other matters that are, theological matters. But the most moral element of it is the LGBTQ stuff. And I've been to their meetings. I've walked into their assembly halls and looked at the vendors that they'd had out, and I would see rainbow pins. I saw Catholics for same-sex marriage bumper stickers just on full display. And this organization, by the way, has bishops who are members. Archbishop John Wester is the USCCB's liaison to the AUSCP. Bishop John Stowe of Lexington is an actual member of the AUSCP. Cardinal Tobin has been a speaker at the AUSCP. Cardinal McElroy has been a speaker. Cardinal Supich has been a speaker. Cardinal Wilton Gregory has been a speaker. So they have Episcopal support for this agency, which is actively working against the church's teaching. So what this article was about, it was tracking down some of the most recent underhanded approach from certain elements within the church to try and promote these LGBTQ ideologies. And what Liam Mahoney did is he juxtaposed that with the unerring and universal teachings of the Catholic Church, showing specifically how this error is being fundamentally undermined, or how this error is fundamentally undermining what the church has always taught.
Well, when we get into the whole thing with LGBTQ or homosexuality and stuff like that, let's just talk about that for a minute here, because I don't understand at all how the church can be receptive of it, but they seem to be in some ways, right? And what you wrote up in this article here, or someone was it that James Martin. Let's talk about him for a minute, because he's like the poster child for it,
right?
And he's a priest, and like I was reading there where he gave the blessing on a same-sex couple that got married. So
right.
The same-sex couple thought that they were receiving a blessing from the church.
Mm-hmm.
And they apparently even said that, it was great that they were invited into the church, into the community of the church and all that kind of stuff. And he never said anything to dissuade that. Isn't that outright? I mean, there's a lot of that going on. There's a lot of that going on with the whole rainbow army and stuff like that within the church. So I know this is a little bit different than immigration, but I just want to get your thoughts on that. Why? Why do you think that's happening? I mean, it's been going on for a while, but why isn't the church pushing back? Why are they accepting it instead of pushing it away?
Well, I think we have to start by distinguishing the church from men within the church. The church herself is inviolate, and her teachings are absolute. They do not change. So the church herself has not accepted the idea that homosexuality is somehow now acceptable or tolerable within the church. There are certain church men, all the way up to the Pope, who have attempted to circumvent what the church has always taught by making it tolerable or acceptable for homosexuals to come into the community and to be embraced as homosexuals. What that does is it corrupts the good morals of the faithful. It corrupts their formation as faithful. It actually perverts their ideologies when it comes to their theological ideologies. And I can't help but think that this is somehow a deliberate assault on the faith itself. I can't speak to the conscience or the minds of the individuals involved, but I can talk about the effects of what they're doing. The truth is, if you go back, all the way back to, say, the 1700s, you start to see that there are certain interest groups that have a strong desire to infiltrate and pervert the church's teachings. It goes back to the Freemasons, goes back to the communists, it goes back to the modernists. The modernists were a bunch of Jesuits in the mid to late 1800s that sought to actually pervert the church's idea, just the way she does theology itself. This was condemned by Pope Pius X in his encyclical Pascendi Dominici Gregis, and the understanding of the church's moral truths have undergone not just they haven't been transformed. I would say that they've been undermined to such a degree that what was once condemned is now tolerated, and the perpetrators of these ideologies are being elevated and applauded. It's not that the teachings have changed, but suddenly the men in charge have stepped back and allowed the bad guys to have free range to say whatever they want. This, I think, is... I'm trying to think of the best way to put it, but I think that what we're looking at is an infiltration of ideology and an infiltration of intent. So the ideological side, there are men who actually believe this stuff. They think that this is really good, that we're doing good by promoting evil. But then you have the infiltration by intent, which are wicked men who are actively attacking the church and trying to change her.
Yeah. I'll go over to Brian here for a minute. Jonathan, I'll go to you. But,
well, again, Michael, let me give you a real-life example here. This goes back a couple of years, but going to the local Catholic church, I had on 2 separate occasions. They were talking about the message of Sodom and Gomorrah, and what they said to the audience. The message of Sodom and Gomorrah was they showed a lack of hospitality.
Yep.
And
yeah, no, that's
I tell you that what is happening, and just like you can look at Europe, and that's foreshadowing what's going to happen here in the Catholic Church, unless there is a change in their thinking by not preaching the revealed Word of God. They're going to start losing lots of people. People are just not going to go to church, and they're going to, have to close up their churches.
No, I think
in my opinion,
that's partly the intent of those who wish to see the church destroyed. But then the ones who are actually doing the perverting of the church's teachings, I've heard that common canard before, that, oh no, sodomy wasn't the sin of, men with men. No. It was the sin of inhospitality. Then why is it called sodomy? That's my that's my big response.
Yeah, and why did God just destroy and love it? Just leveled that entire city, both of those cities. Yeah, but when you read it, if you actually read, I don't think people actually read the Bible. Okay, they just listen to whatever somebody's interpretation is. If you actually read it, that's the only sin they talk about is that homosexuality over and over and over and over and over. But yet it was the sin of inhospitality or something like that. Yeah, so that's crazy. Very crazy. All right, what's happening?
All right. So, on that last comment about reading the Bible, I'm going to interject that I have a copy on my bedside table. And I'll tell you, even if you're on the fence or on the bubble at all, I suggest this because I've been doing this a lot for the last couple of years. Every once in a while, if I'm really struggling with something, just grappling with something in life, I'll grab it and flip at random to a spot and then and read with an open mind and think about whatever I happen to turn to. There have been so many times I'll go and tell my wife, like, look at this. I mean, here's this crazy thing that just like jumps off the page. I love that. Just dig into the Bible at any point. I have a friend, one of my best friends in high school. I think he was kind of wrestling with his theology. But he used to talk about how the Bible it's a great read because even from an atheist perspective, it's full of great stories. So anyway, I'm just putting a plug in for anybody that's willing to at least pick up a Bible and take a look and read into it. But getting it back onto a topic here, I have some comments and thoughts and questions. The first is, I actually just ducked over to my office library and picked up my copy of the Communist Manifesto because I believe that there's an element of the communist objective that Karl Marx and Unger, whatever his name, the other guy,
Ingalls.
wrote. They wrote in the objective of taking over the church, because there's so many times when bad guys tried to do bad things, and the church stepped in and blocked them. So they realized that they needed to sort of neuter the church and get them to stop fighting or being willing to fight. So there's been an infiltration objective for a long time, I believe. But there are a few things occur to me. So one is, we have this perspective of like what our house means to us. You come home and you know that you sleep there and there's food and there's shelter and everything. But if you show up one day and somebody in your house has suddenly decided to turn it into something completely different, a sports arena or something, that's jarring and it's not right. And nobody agreed to that. We're experiencing it right now in a whole bunch of different realms in pillars of society, including religion, like we see with education. There are a whole bunch of people out here like, wait, we never agreed to switch off of education and academics into something else. Why in the world is all the other stuff there? Same thing with churches. And there's an element, and I want to ask, first of all, Michael, thanks for joining us. But what do you know about the Black Robe Society, which in brief, I probably shouldn't paraphrase because I'm asking you a question, but in my view, my understanding is that is men of the cloth, the clergy, who are deciding to go back to the way that religion was intended, which is preaching from the pulpit on everything, including religious and political matters. That's what I meant to say, political matters, and helping to steer, guide, and drive society instead of this weird tepid thing that we moved to decades ago, where the church tries to be fluffy and nothing to anybody and not have any bedrock solidity to it. So those are my comments.
So I'm not sure what the Black Robe Society is. Maybe you're referring to the Jesuits. But the Jesuits have been a primary problem within the church for the last 100 years. The rise of the modernist heresy came out of the Jesuit order. It primarily captured the Jesuit order. But I want to read you something. This comes from the Alta Vendita, which is a Masonic blueprint that was discovered and published by the Pope back in the late 1800s. And what it outlines is a plan to infiltrate the church, primarily through seminaries and religious orders, and for those men who infiltrate the church to work their way to the top.
How to have fun anytime, anywhere. Step 1, go to ChumbaCasino.com.
ChumbaCasino.com. Got it.
Step 2, collect your welcome bonus.
Come to Papa welcome bonus.
Step 3, play hundreds of casino-style games for free.
That's a lot of games. All for free?
Step 4, unleash your excitement.
Chumba Casino has been delivering thrills for over a decade. So claim your free welcome bonus now and live the Chumba life. Visit ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
And once at the top, to shape a pope of their liking. And I'll just read you this little quote. It says, "Now then, to assure ourselves of a pope of the required dimensions, it is a question first of shaping for this pope a generation worthy of the reign we are dreaming of. Leave aside old people and those of mature age. Go to the youth, and if it is possible, even to the children. You will contrive for yourselves at little cost a reputation as good Catholics and pure patriots. This reputation will put access to our doctrines into the midst of the young clergy, as well as deeply into the monasteries. In a few years, by the force of things, this young clergy will have overrun all the functions. They will form the sovereign's council. They will be called to choose a pontiff who should reign. And this pontiff, like most of his contemporaries, will be necessarily more or less imbued with the revolutionary Italian and humanitarian principles that we are going to begin to put into circulation." So this this blueprint, which was written by the Freemasons, primarily in Italy, it gives an instruction into the infiltration in the church, and it has shaped the church according to their designs. And what we're seeing right now is the end result of that.
That's pretty scary stuff. Very scary stuff. Hey, Ken, are you out there? Do we have anything in the chat that we could post? I don't know if he's out there.
I'm looking at Rumble. I don't see anything there. By the way, I'm just going to interject for anybody that's listening and curious. I misspoke. It's not the Black Robe Society. It's Black Robe Regiment. It's called the Black Robe Regiment, and I pulled up a web page. It apparently is active. I have to paraphrase. I've been told about this from Pastor Ernie Sanders. I think is the first person that introduced it to me. It dates back to like the 1200s or something. But these are clergy who actually went into battle. They would get swords and fight in battle, and I think there were some that were involved in the American Revolution. So anyway, that's kind of neither here nor there. But as we talk about finding ways to fight back in today's battles, this is one that sort of I'm interested in learning more about and I'm curious about. But as far as some of this crazy idea that you're talking about, you go into churches, and I've seen them. And, some of these strange denominations are, you can go into these churches and they're all full of, rainbow everything, and they're just adopting whatever latest societal fad. I think they're probably just after money. That's my expectation. But they part of what my mind keeps going back to is the notion that there's a designed intention to kind of usurp and take over the churches, to kind of get them out of the way. And again, just kind of using schools as an example, because I've been very involved in the fight for K through 12 education for many years now. I can see the steps that it's taken to neuter and water down, dilute, and just fundamentally alter everything about the delivery of education in K through 12. And it seems to me similar to what we see in churches. I mean, there's a step-by-step process, as you're spelling out as well, of getting people in positions of power and authority who have objectives other than the bedrock traditional values of that institution.
Yeah.
Sure. I wrote an article back in 2018, and the title of it was Lucifer, the Founder of the Trans Movement. And what I did is I traced the trans ideology through going all the way back to when Lucifer fell from heaven. Because what he said in Isaiah says this: "Thy pride is brought down to hell, thy carcass is fallen down. Under thee shall the moth be strewed, and worms shall be thy covering. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, who didst rise in the morning? How art thou fallen to the earth, that didst wound the nations? And thou saidst in thy heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit in the mountain of the covenant in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the height of the clouds. I will be like the Most High." So this statement, "I will be like," it's a loaded statement, and I think a lot of people miss what it means. First of all, it's a statement in future tense. I will become. I will be like. So he's saying, I am not currently, but my being will change to become a likeness of the Most High. Now, what most people don't know is that the name Michael is a question, and the question is, who is like God? So when Lucifer says, I will be like the Most High, St. Michael's response is, well, who is like God? The answer is man. Man is like God, because God is taking on a human nature. He had revealed he's going to take on a human nature. This is why Lucifer rebelled, because he wanted to also have a human nature. This is also why demons possess people and angels don't. So for Lucifer to say, I will be like God, he gets cast out of heaven. And what's the first thing he does? He goes to Eve in the Garden of Eden, and he says, you know, first of all, he starts talking about, well, did God really say if you eat the fruit, you'll die? Da, da, da. And Eve sets him straight. And then Lucifer says, oh, you're not going to die. Your eyes will be opened, and you will become like gods, plural. So, in other words, Lucifer is saying, your nature will transform, and you will be like me. You'll be like one of us, one of the gods. And so that's when Eve ate the fruit, and she was tempted, and she fell. So the whole mess that we're fighting right now, this trans ideology, is predicated on the first fall of Lucifer and the fall of Adam and Eve. And then when you start looking through history, you see this notion, this occult notion, that one thing can be transformed into something else. Whether it's talking about transforming lead into gold, or transforming these animals so that you form chimeras. You know, you've got a goat-headed lion or something along those lines. You've got evolution, which is the idea that you can have one species transform into another. And now you've got transgenderism, and ultimately this is going to lead to transhumanism, this idea that man and machine can somehow become one thing. And you can download somebody's personality into a computer, and their soul is going to reside there forever, and you'll always have that person to talk to. So this trans ideology is built around Lucifer's fall from heaven. So the problems that we're facing are demonic in nature. We have to remember there is a demonic origin to the evil in the world. So if we keep that in mind, then the motives of individuals or the motives of various groups as they start pushing the evil ideologies, you see that those individuals are also battlegrounds. We're fighting for their souls just as much as anybody else's.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I'm going to have to write that down, except I'm going to have to record it again and write it all down because I don't quite remember it all, but it's very good. Yeah, very, very good. Yeah, that's some good deep theology there. Very, very impressed with it. So I'm just gonna swing back as we kind of wrap it up here with this whole immigration thing. I want to show you this. This, going back to USAID here for a minute, this is Samantha Powers. Now, you're talking about evil, right? You're talking about corruption. You're talking about people wanting to get more than they should. Her net worth went from $6 million to $30 million in the last 3 years. She is the director of USAID. There's Musk. So, you know, I think we've heard about all the shenanigans and the cheating that's been going on with USAID, the $44 billion. Listen to this for a second. I saw a school that they built somewhere out in Africa. They were gifted $150 million to build this one-room hut. It's about what it was out in Africa. It was like a one very large room hut. It did not look very modern or anything, but they were gifted $150 million for it. So you kind of wonder, well, maybe it cost at the most $100,000 to build that thing. You know, where's literally $150 million gone? And I think we're seeing that happening a lot, coming back in kickbacks and things like that. And there's going to be a lot of investigation going on in that because that lady there, who's head of USAID, she upped her income a lot. We know of all the politicians, just like Bernie. We're just playing Bernie here. Now, Bernie's asking for money, by the way.
We're going to be running around this country along with others to rally the American people.
It's got to start rallying the people, but his net income has increased. It's through the roof, okay? It's through the roof.
To continue the fight for justice, to stand up to Trump and the authoritarianism that we are seeing. To be successful, we're going to need your help. So please, if you can send $27 or
$27
anything that you could afford.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna get that out right now. The
Joe, I do have some more questions for Michael.
Go ahead.
Though.
Sure, fire away.
Michael, what would you suggest that the average citizens, knowing what you're telling them the truth, what do we do with this? How do we make changes? Because this is not acceptable what Catholic Charities or the CRS, what they're doing.
Hey, it's Ryan Seacrest. Life comes at you fast, which is why it's important to find some time to relax. A little you time. Enter Chumba Casino. With no download required, you can jump on anytime, anywhere for the chance to redeem some serious prizes. So treat yourself with Chumba Casino and play over 100 online casino-style games, all for free. Go to ChumbaCasino.com to collect your free welcome bonus. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Well, it's twofold.
Do we write letters or do we call? What do we do?
It's twofold. The first step is prayer, because without prayer, we can do nothing. Anything that we try to do would be an empty endeavor. So we have to pray first. The second step is to expose the information, to show it for what it is, to continue. I mean, people have to become very educated in this stuff. And unfortunately, there's a lot of information to cover. And the thing is, misinformation or getting it wrong actually does more harm than good. So you have to really familiarize yourself with the information. You have to be able to understand it so that you can articulate it when you talk to your senators, when you talk to your congressman, when you talk to your priest and your bishop. Okay, this information it's critical to exposing the problem. They say that sunlight is the best disinfectant, and I think that getting that information out there is the most important part of fixing the problem. Now, you're not always going to find a sympathetic ear. The scriptures give us the formula for how to deal with this kind of thing. First, you go to your brother. Okay, you talk to him in person. If he doesn't listen, then take a friend with you and talk to him. And if he doesn't listen to them, then take the church and the community and get him to listen. And if he won't even listen to the church, then treat him like you would a tax collector. And I think that that's where we are with these organizations like CRS and USCCB. Just treat them like tax collectors, because that's really basically all they are. They're going to Congress. They're lobbying Congress to increase funding for USAID and PEPFAR and the Global Fund and all these other agencies that are out there spreading contraception because they're getting massive kickbacks. Catholic Relief Services is the #1 recipient of USAID funding. Why? Because the bishops on Capitol Hill, well, not the bishops, but the USCCB, the bureaucracy of it, is going to Capitol Hill, and they're regularly lobbying the Congress to increase funding. So it's kind of a quid pro quo. We've got to cut the snake off at the head. So it starts with getting rid of the funding. And doing that, you have to have the information. You have to get the information in the right hands. So there are several steps to it, but ultimately, not everybody is called to get active. But please pray, because without prayer, nothing is going to work.
Amen to that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you much. Hey, I'll let you wrap it up, Jonathan. In a final thought.
All right. So I guess one thing that occurs to me, I've got some friends that are in the libertarian realm. And actually, a lot of libertarianism really appeals to me. It's very compelling, very interesting. But there's some wacky stuff that shows up in the libertarian arm of the political spectrum. And, I've gotten into some conversations with people who don't think that there should be imprisonment and nobody should have jail time for anything, no matter how egregious the offense. It's just wild stuff. When I get into conversations with people who claim to be biblical, the first thing is, if there's wild stuff that comes out of the conversation, it's really difficult for me to tune in and pay attention to them, because it's hard to take that seriously when there's some wacky stuff out there that is anti-biblical, and everybody who's ever even read anything from the Bible should know. But the next step for me because I am that ex-Wall Street guy, is follow the money. And I can't have faith and trust in these quote unquote nonprofit organizations when I see the amount of money that flows through them, and I see the number of people that have gotten embedded in these organizations. And unfortunately, Jewish Family Services, Catholic Charities, Christian Family Services, a whole bunch of these, the veneer of a religious organization, which presents itself as you want to assume that it's credible, but when you see the number of people there with high seven-figure income, six-figure and into the seven-figure income, and they've been there not fixing issues and not really tackling things for decades, I am back to the belief, and I think it's Leonard who's said this a number of times on this show. Is Leonard with us? Leonard talks regularly, and I love it. Every time he says this, just get back to basics, get back to your community, because it should be when there's a need. If we've done our job well, and the churches are well run and staffed and financed, when there are issues in community, the local church should be able to step in. Because I think that we have, at a high level with these organizations, the ones I just named and others, it's basically become this quasi-government. It's like this fiefdom of corruption, in my book.
No.
So a couple of things that you said. One has to do with libertarianism, and I would say that the libertarians are basically just to the right of anarchists. They would love to see not a lawless society, but a society without any enforcement of the law, which it's upside down ultimately, because the purpose of government is to protect individual freedoms and individual rights. And then the laws are built around those protections. And then, of course, the enforcement of the law is the use of collective force to ensure that individual rights and freedoms are protected. So for a libertarian to say, well, we shouldn't have any prisons and anything should go, anything should be legal, like abortion or marijuana, drugs, whatever it is, they just want to have kind of an open lawlessness without calling it anarchy, I think is dangerous. And on the other hand, you were talking about the NGOs and people receive, these various groups that were on the government dole. And the real problem, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, is that charity has been transformed into an industry. And the idea of charity is an individual act. It's not something that's done through collective humanitarianism. That's just philanthropy. Charity, the purpose of charity is to prepare a soul to be receptive to the Word of God. That's what charity is. And the motivation of charity is the love of the individual, the love of their soul. So when I give food to a beggar on the street corner, I'm not just trying to feed his belly. I'm also going to talk to him and tell him about the gospel, to tell him, look, you have a value that is greater than anything in the universe. If only you would embrace what God is calling you to do. And I've had conversations with people in that kind of situation many, many times, because when I look at somebody, I want to see them as God sees them. I want to see them as that lost coin, that pearl of great price, because they have a soul to be purchased. So the purpose of charity is to help draw that soul to God, to win that soul for God's sake. That's the victory. And that's where the triumph comes from. But if we're not working towards that, if all we're doing is feeding bellies and starving souls, Fulton Sheen said it perfectly. If souls are not saved, nothing is saved. So that's what charity exists for. That's why we have it. And if these industries are simply looking to line their own pockets because they want to get on the government dole to perform a particular social work, it does no good. It does no good for the individual, and it doesn't do any good for society, and all they're doing is enriching themselves.
Yeah, that's a great point. there has to be the preaching of the gospel. I mean, how can you evangelize without preaching Christ, right?
Right.
You give them a piece of bread, or you give somebody who's starving some food or something, it's like, yeah, but they don't know anything about Christ. They don't know anything, about their soul and all that kind of thing. They just have bread or something to eat for another day. So that's the big problem right there. And yeah, when you're tied to the government like that and you can't preach, and because there's so many different, they're not going to take sides with a religion. Whereas if you're just a Catholic Charities and you just use your own donations or something, you could preach all you want. But then I don't even think they preach, even when it's their own money. I don't think they get out and preach a whole lot. I was reading something else where this one lady was saying, she's devastated because USAID is shut down, and she's going to lose her job with Catholic Relief Services. She says, I've been doing this for 33 years. And I'm thinking to myself, you've been doing it for 33 years. It's not supposed to be a career. Okay, This is not a career. This is like going to a part of the country or something like that needs help. Give them some help and get out. You can't be. But so anyhow, if you've been doing it for 33 years, it's a career, and it's not really a charity and everything like that. But I want to thank you, Michael, for coming on tonight. I really appreciate it. You did a terrific job. So,
thank you very much, Michael.
We don't do the confetti for anybody, but we're doing it tonight, okay? So thank you very much, and hopefully talk to you again sometime soon, okay?
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me on. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you, and God bless you.
God bless you, Michael. Thank you so much.
God bless you, too.
God bless all your efforts and everything like that. Okay, guys, well, guess we're going to wrap it up tonight.
That was great, Joe.
Yeah, that was.
Michael was fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm going to be sure to make sure Leonard, sees this podcast. He's going to be very interested in this.
Right, yeah, and I expected Leonard to be on. I thought he would be able to contribute a little bit.
He had another commitment.
Yeah. All right, well, have a good night, and just leave us with this some heavy metal from Trump, okay? Have a good night.
You fucker! Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.